governance now. This is Gitanjali Minhas, and you're watching Checks and Balances. According to Transparency International, India has the highest bribery rate of 39% and the highest rate of citizens at 46% using their personal connections to get their work done. While speaking on the International Anti-Corruption Day in December last year, P.K. Mishra, Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister, had said that the impact of corruption is especially high on common citizens and even higher on poorer and vulnerable sections of the community. He had said that tackling the crime of corruption is the right and responsibility of everyone. Now, what is corruption? Wikipedia defines corruption as a form of dishonesty or criminal offense which is undertaken by a person or an organization which is interested with a position of power or authority in order to acquire illicit benefit or abuse of power for personal gain. Corruption thrives on low levels of transparency. Despite the government's mandate for e-governance to bring in efficacy, several departments have not digitized their offices. In today's episode, we will not talk about corruption that grabs eyeballs. We will talk about petty, everyday corruption that trickles down to the lower level of administration in places of public dealing like the public distribution system, municipality, land records, health, education, transport department, police, etc., that haunt the common man. We spoke to transparency and anti-corruption activists and experts. Anjali Bhardwaj, Co-Convenor National Campaign for People's Right to Information, as well as recipient of the International Anti-Corruption Champions Award by the US Department of State, said,
we work with women in slum settlements, and they said that they don't get their rations under the public distribution system. So they basically said that the shopkeeper says that the government is not sending their share of rations to the shop. So when they filed right to information applications under the RTI Act, they asked for the stock registers and the sale registers of their shops, and the stock register showed that every month ration was reaching the shops, and the sale registers were a complete work of fiction. They were showing ration being distributed to people who either did not live in those places or to people who had ration cards which had no entries showing that they were not getting it. So you see, all of this corruption is happening because there is an understanding amongst those who are indulging in corruption that this information will never get out and people will never be able to hold them accountable. There are studies that have shown, and these are very credible studies done by think tanks, that have shown that in India, if you want to get some work done in the government, giving a bribe is only as effective as filing an RTI application. So the reality is that we do not have adequate information. Things happen behind a veil of secrecy, which allows corruption to thrive. And unfortunately, we also do not have adequate grievance redress mechanisms.
Journalist and human rights activist Rakesh Raman, who has been running a community court since 2017 to help residents of Delhi's cooperative housing societies fight corruption and lawlessness in their housing societies in connivance with officials of the cooperative department, says,
even court orders are not being treated seriously by these bureaucrats and politicians. No complaint of corruption should go to the courts. Our laws are very good. These are not being understood by these bureaucrats and law enforcement agencies. Number two, they are complicit in these crimes. They don't want to implement those laws. If suppose a person is a victim of corruption, they should only explore the administrative channels to get relief from those channels instead of going to the court. And courts are very expensive. Administrative channel means offices. You have to go to these offices. Offices also have these anti-corruption laws or rules designed for that particular office. आपने सिर्फ ये बताया कि ये जो आदमी है इस ऑफिस में बैठा हुआ है, ये मेरा 6 महीने से काम नहीं कर रहा, जबकि ये उसके मैनुअल में ये लिखा गया है कि वो हमारा 1 महीने के अंदर अंदर ये क्लियरेंस देगा.
Anjali too says
the problem that exists on the ground is that if a citizen goes with a complaint, then there is really no place where they can be sure that their complaint will be accepted. Even if the complaint is accepted, they don't know in how much time their complaint will be responded to. They have no idea who's responsible for functioning within a time frame to redress their complaint. Unfortunately, we've seen that since 2005, when the Right to Information law was passed, more than 90 people have been killed in India for filing RTI applications, for exposing corruption. And this is not corruption necessarily at the highest levels. This is corruption in the public distribution system, corruption in the pension system, corruption in Awas Yojanas, housing schemes of the government which are meant for the poor.
Anjali says that for a vast and complex country like India, systems need to be decentralized.
In India, and especially if we talk about petty corruption, there can be no centralized fix to corruption. It has to be decentralized, which means that if there is an old woman sitting in a remote village who's not getting her pensions because of corruption, we cannot expect her to approach the Prime Minister's office or to come to Delhi and ask for a recourse. She has to be empowered, sitting where she is in that remote village, to be able to access information, to be able to file a complaint, and to be able to get a redress of her complaint.
Former Maharashtra DGP Praveen Dixit has said that the complaints must be filed online and taken cognizance of by the officials. Speaking about various aspects, he said,
so there is a right to services, and there is a commissioner for right to services as well. Now the right to services encourages the government departments to make sure that all these services are provided online, and that is helping a lot. Practice of online registration of complaints and taking immediate cognizance of these online complaints, that is very much required. And what action has been taken should be reported back to the complainant within 24 hours. Many of the educated persons also, they prefer to have an agent and then do the work themselves online. So there is a great need to educate the common man about the online services, so that the common man feels confident and says there is no need to approach any agent in between. In fact, my suggestion would be that the persons who are feeling harassed, they should not indulge in any kind of exchanges or any verbal fights with the government officer. They should simply keep their telephone on, record whatever is happening, whatever the person is mentioning, record it and submit it to the acbmaharashtra.net. That will be an excellent piece of evidence in support of their complaint. See, this practice of encouraging corruption by certain persons in between, these persons need to be boycotted. Today what is happening is that those who are the lawbreakers, they are having a sense of pride in how they broke the laws, and they are tom-tomming around, mentioning that I got it done and I did this, etc. And those who are the law-abiding citizens, they are feeling very much disheartened.
While the police is not receptive to citizens' complaints, citizens can take recourse to anti-corruption laws like Prevention of Corruption Act 1988, the CBC Manual, the Lokpal and Lok Ayukta Act of 2013, file an RTI complaint, or even approach the CBI's anti-corruption wing. However, Raman, who is a consultant on democracy and governance in the VDEM project in Sweden, says, in effect, none of these systems work due to the complex and cumbersome complaint monitoring system. He, however, says that the central government's CP Grams is a good medium for filing online complaints, even as he underlines that citizens must register their complaints properly with the registration number.
तो अब सरकार में क्या है कि वो एक डिपार्टमेंट, जैसे मैंने लिखा है, एक डिपार्टमेंट से दूसरे डिपार्टमेंट में वो भेज देते हैं कंप्लेंट, केस क्लोज। कोई कंप्लेनेंट को तो कोई रिलीफ नहीं मिला। मैं तो यही कह रहा हूँ कि लोगों को बोलना चाहिए, चाहे आप कुछ भी 2 सेंटेंस की भी अगर कंप्लेंट लिख सकते हैं तो वो लिख कर दीजिए, बोलिए तुम। There is a rich-poor divide is widening every day, every hour. As we are talking, this divide is widening. अगर पनिशमेंट होगी तो करप्शन अपने आप रुक जाएगी। अब थोड़ी सी होप मेरे को इस तरह से लग रही है कि ये जो करप्शन है बहुत बढ़ती जा रही है, एंड इंडिया इज एट द फोरफ्रंट ऑफ दिस ह्यूज करप्शन रैकेट, ठीक है। तो अब थोड़ा सा पिछले 1 या 2 साल से एक ग्लोबल लेवल के ऊपर ये जो लोकल केसेस है इन डिफरेंट कंट्रीज, उनको हैंडल करने के लिए एक कुछ स्टेप्स लिए जा रहे हैं।
The person who has lodged the complaint, he needs to be encouraged by the friends, by the near ones, by the family members, as well as by the media from time to time till the actual trial is over. Because lodging a complaint is one part, but seeing that it is ending in conviction is another matter. And there the role of the judicial officers also comes in. Unfortunately, the cases which are submitted for trial, they have been taking more than 8 years, 10 years or more than that. Judicial officers' mindset also has to change. And the culprits need to be penalized. So once those culprits are penalized, they have to be removed from service. Actually, they have to be dismissed. But some of them, they continue even after traps. There are, I was told, almost 190 persons who have been trapped recently in the last year or so. They have been not even suspended.
Dixit, who has also served as the Director General of Anti-Corruption Bureau Maharashtra, spoke about the lacunae in criminal justice system and said that laws need to be updated.
The law envisages that there should be something called cognizable and non-cognizable. And in case of non-cognizable cases, the courts come down very heavily against the police if they take any action. So the police are left almost helpless. Instead of taking action, they have to direct the complainant to approach the magistrate and seek the help of the magistrate to allow the police to probe the matter. So that distinction has to be removed immediately. Secondly, there is something called the applications. Whenever the person goes to the police station, he gives an application. Now this is called application inquiry. Now instead of stopping it at application inquiry, that should be considered as a sort of a complaint only. And action has to be immediately initiated. The law has to, the will of the people has to be reflected through the legislators in the laws which we are having. And the laws have to be up to date. We cannot run a country like India in 2023 or 24 by rules and laws made in 1860. Pressure must be mounted on the government to amend the laws. Because we keep on hearing the Home Minister and others from time to time mentioning that the IPC and CRPC will be amended. But then there has to be a time frame. A lot of people, they first approach the advocates. And these advocates in between, they have a tendency to turn the civil matters into criminal matters. And they give it a shape of a criminal nature. So that makes it more complicated.
Unfortunately, what we have seen that all governments, we have experience of so many governments in the country, all governments are averse to being held accountable. And when parties are in the opposition, they really do sympathize and they are very happy to promise reforms. So it is really lack of political will that causes these kind of things to happen. It's not like any government doesn't know what it has to do. It really it comes down to governments having the will to be accountable to people. All the countries that have good governance models where their rights and entitlements are delivered effectively have put these systems in place. They have strong transparency mechanisms and they have strong and effective accountability mechanisms, which means a strong grievance redress mechanism and strong ways to protect people who file those complaints and grievances. At least in the day-to-day running of the government, if this corruption can be curtailed, then it makes governance that much more effective for a common person. We cannot expect citizens to keep coming forward as whistleblowers, getting attacked, losing their daily wages. For a lot of people, filing complaints, following them up is something that is very, very expensive and something they can't do.
The US Department of State in its 2021 country report on India says despite the existence of law providing criminal penalties for corruption, officials frequently engage in corrupt practices with impunity. Corruption is anti-national and anti-poor as the resources meant for development are siphoned off by the corrupt. Corruption is stunting India's economy and increasing economic disparity. It devalues governance and erodes common citizens' trust in the state. India needs bold structural reforms and comprehensive refinement of laws. Thank you for watching Checks and Balances.